Next on Currents News, a beloved Brooklyn tradition is back and towering high above the skies. The Giglio dances through the streets of Williamsburg to the delight of onlookers and the faithful. Pope Francis makes his first public appearance post-surgery, looking healthy and happy as he prayed the Angelus from his hospital window. The fight for freedom in Cuba as the country's biggest protest in decades break out, the unprecedented crisis facing the communist-run island nation. Plus, as the U.S. Mexico border continues to struggle with a massive influx of migrants, two people are hoping to make the journey easier for the youngest to bear, one bear at a time. The news starts right now. Gracing the skies of Williamsburg and dancing through the streets of Brooklyn, the Giglio tradition is back in full swing. Good evening, I'm Emily Drewby. Christine Persichetti is off. Thousands of revelers descended on Williamsburg to see the enormous Giglio Tower paraded through the streets. After a year-long break due to the COVID pandemic, this more than a century-old tradition is a staple for the Brooklyn neighborhood. Its lifting is a rite of passage for parishioners at Our Lady of Mount Carmel. It's no easy task, but it's tradition, the lifting of the Giglio.
And every year we come back, and we wouldn't miss it for the world.
4 generations of TUFANOs have touched these steel beams. Now Peter is here with his sons.
I lift this for my father, and I'm hoping that one day that both of them will lift it for me when I'm gone. That's how important it is to me.
Every year on Giglio Sunday, thousands of spectators fill the streets of Williamsburg to watch as over 100 men lift this 7-story, 4-ton tower into the sky. But last year, for the first time since World War II, the Giglio was canceled because of the pandemic. Now the beloved Italian Catholic tradition is back. It happens right outside of Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church. Monsignor Jamie GIGANTIELLO is the pastor.
This is where the roots are of our people that have moved away, and they always come back. And that's why it makes this feast so special, because people come back. And it really makes this parish stay alive in the midst of all the changes that are going on around us.
Sal Quagliata is one of those people. He now lives in New Jersey.
Coming back to this neighborhood is home. I remember coming here when I was 3 years old, holding my father's hand.
The lift happening during the Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel in San Paolino di Nola. A tradition brought to Brooklyn from Italy. Music and confetti pour out from both the Giglio and this life-size sculpture of a boat as the two dance down the street. On the Giglio, St. Paulinus, a man who traded himself to pirates to save Italian children. After hearing of his bravery, a Turkish sultan set out to rescue St. Paulinus. This boat represents the one that returned him from captivity. The two massive structures meet in the middle of the street right outside of the church, a way to remember St. Paulinus, but also a way to carry on the history of this neighborhood.
Remembering our immigrant forebears, those who carried the Giglio 118 years ago in 1903, the first Our Lady of Mount Carmel feast, to keep their memory alive.
That was Brooklyn Auxiliary Bishop James MASSA. He gave the homily at the Mass celebrated before the lift. The crowds were very large this year, people happy to have their storied feast back. The Giglio Festival runs through July 18th. If you missed Sunday's lift, you still have a few more chances to see it. There will be a night lift this Wednesday, July 14th, starting at 7:30 p.m. and another lift next Sunday, July 18th at 3 p.m. Turning now to the Vatican, the Holy Father making his first appearance since having intestinal surgery. Pilgrims cheering outside of Gemelli Hospital as the Pope leaves his hospital bed to lead pilgrims in Sunday's Angelus prayer. We are receiving word tonight that the Pope will stay in the hospital for another few days in order to, quote, best optimize the medical and rehabilitation therapy. That's according to Vatican officials. On Sunday, the Holy Father was smiling and waving from his 10th floor hospital window, praying for the sick and stressing the importance of good health care for all. DELIA Gallagher reports.
We saw Pope Francis for the first time since his colon surgery on Sunday. The Pope came to the balcony of the Gemelli Hospital together with 3 young patients. He thanked the crowds for praying for him. He talked about the importance of health care being accessible to all people. And the Pope made a special appeal for Haiti following the assassination of their president. Now, the Vatican has been keeping us up to date throughout the week on the Pope's health, saying he has made a lot of progress. He is up, walking around, eating. He even managed to have dinner with some of the doctors and nurses from the hospital. Delia Gallagher, Rome.
Outside of Gemelli Hospital, Rome's poor paid a visit to the Holy Father. Around 20 homeless people gathered outside to thank the Holy Father for all the work he has done in housing and vaccinating the disenfranchised. One from the group even giving the Pope's security detail flowers to be delivered to Francis. Now on Currents News, the fight for freedom in Cuba. The island nation seeing its largest protests in decades.
These are protests inspired by the harsh reality of everyday life.
The United States standing in solidarity with the protesters, from officials to everyday people, all calling for an end to the island nation's autocratic socialist regime. Currents News coverage of the Cuban protests starts right now. The fight for freedom in Cuba has been ignited after decades. Marchers shouting they are no longer afraid as they demonstrate against the Cuban government. Angry because the communist-run island nation is facing its biggest economic crisis since the fall of the Soviet Union. Currents News' Jessica Easthope reports on the growing unrest.
Unprecedented protests all over Cuba on Sunday have elected officials speaking out. President Joe Biden calling the unrest a clarion call for freedom.
The United States stands firmly with the people of Cuba. We call on the government of Cuba to refrain from violence or attempts to silence the voice of the people of Cuba.
The White House showing solidarity with those protesting government failures like ongoing food shortages, the cost of living, and the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. People shouted "Unite" and "Freedom" as many clashed with police during the rare and historic protests. The country is in the midst of its worst economic crisis in decades. The pandemic brought Cuba's tourism industry to a standstill. Now, a quality of life crisis has driven protesters to call for Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel to step down. Some lawmakers are hoping President Biden overturns Trump administration policies that tighten trade embargoes with Cuba. But others, like Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis, the daughter of a Cuban immigrant, disagree, saying President Obama's plan to normalize relationships with Cuba would do more harm. One of 10 Cuban Americans serving in Congress, she released this statement saying, quote, "I hope this is the beginning of real change toward freedom and democracy on the island. President Biden, as leader of the free world, must do all he can to influence this change." Cuban Senator Marco Rubio also joined those calls, tweeting, "Socialism promises guaranteed food, medicine, and income if you give up your freedom. When, as always, it fails to deliver, you don't get your freedom back."
People are scared. The people are hungry. The people are fed up.
Retired Auxiliary Bishop OCTAVIO CISNEROS said the oppression taking place in his home country is very much tied to the lack of freedoms faced by Cuban Catholics.
Together with our prayers, we have to do something. The vacation they experienced in Cuba was not a reality, and the reality can be seen now in the streets, which they have been caught up by the socialist government.
Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel has called for supporters of his Communist Party to counter the protesters in the streets. They're up against that, as well as a 9 p.m. curfew that was put in place because of the pandemic. Jessica Easthope, Currents News. Emily?
Jess, the news of what's happening on the ground in Havana right now is severely delayed. What can you tell us about how the government there is controlling even that aspect of this social unrest?
Yeah, that's right. The government has actually cut off widespread internet access, and so it's tough to get the latest numbers when it comes to arrests or maybe even injuries and fatalities that those protests might have caused. And remember, now all of this is happening during a surge of COVID cases that is just plowing through Cuba. The number of COVID cases has tripled there in just 2 weeks. Emily?
Thank you for that report, Jess. We're also getting word about a Catholic priest on the ground there. Father Castro Alvarez was allegedly beaten and arrested in Cuba while defending young protesters on Sunday. A Catholic news agency in Cuba says he's being held at the police station and is being accused of public disorder. Stateside, thousands of demonstrators took to the streets of South Florida in a show of solidarity for the Cuban people. Marchers gathered in Miami's Little Havana neighborhood calling for an end to authoritarian rule, waving flags and chanting, demanding that democracy prevail for their oppressed relatives in Cuba.
The people of Cuba in Miami is accompanying that momentum because the end is here, and we are actually also asking the international community to join us.
A small group of demonstrators also gathered in Lafayette Park outside of the White House to rally support and raise awareness. Now to the growing crisis in Haiti. Pope Francis remembered the people of Haiti in his prayer Sunday, urging the nation's residents to lay down arms following the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse.
I am close to the dear Haitian people. I hope that the spiral of violence will cease and that the nation will be able to resume the path towards a future of peace and harmony.
This comes as the Caribbean nation sinks deeper into violence, with organized gangs ransacking homes and driving thousands to seek shelter at churches and outdoor fields. Despite the chaos, Haitian authorities say they have arrested a man who helped orchestrate the assassination. According to police, Christian Emmanuel Sanson, a doctor based in Florida, recruited the hitman through a private security firm in a plot to become Haiti's new president. The arrest comes as a growing number of politicians challenge interim President Minister Claude Joseph, who is currently in charge of Haiti, with help from police and the military. Speaking out for the first time since the attack, the First Lady of Haiti, Martine Moïse, blamed her husband's death on political rivals, saying they sent a group of mercenaries to assassinate the president inside his own house while he was with his family because he was fighting for better roads, water, electricity, referendum, and the upcoming election at the end of the year. This comes as a delegation of U.S. officials arrive in Haiti to help mitigate the fallout of the assassination. The team, consisting of U.S. security and law enforcement officials, met with Haiti's interim leaders and are now aiding with the investigation. A Pentagon spokesperson says they are reviewing a request to send hundreds of U.S. troops to Haiti, but that decision is still under review. There's a lot more news headed your way. A long legal battle in Virginia has finally come to a close. What that means for these two Confederate statues. Plus,
it's just amazing what a stuffed animal can do.
How one man is going the distance to help migrant children caught up in conflicts at the border. And good news for the Diocese of Brooklyn as 3 men move one step closer to priesthood. A big win for vocations in the Diocese of Brooklyn as 3 seminarians took a major step towards becoming priests.
May God, who has begun the good work in you.
Auxiliary Bishop James Massa ordaining the men transitional deacons at St. Luke's Church in Whitestone, Queens this Saturday. That means that in about a year they could become priests. Until then, the 3 deacons will be ministering in parishes around Brooklyn and Queens while they finish their seminarian studies. The power of prayer in Brooklyn Heights as nearly 50 Catholics processed to Planned Parenthood Saturday in protest. The group from the New York City for Abortion Rights Coalition reciting the rosary as they walked before stopping outside the Planned Parenthood clinic to pray for expecting moms and those considering abortion. The fight for life also continuing in Washington, D.C. U.S. bishops are encouraging Catholics to take the pro-life battle to Capitol Hill. President Biden's proposed budget omits the Hyde Amendment, a measure that prevents your taxpayer dollars from going towards abortions. The Bishop of Brooklyn, Nicholas DiMarzio, wants Catholics in his diocese to reach out to their lawmakers and demand the amendment be preserved.
Senator Hyde had this put in, and it's withstood the ravages of time and different administrations, that no taxpayer money would go to fund abortions. We can't stop abortions completely, but it's unfair to say that we're going to take taxpayer money where people don't agree with it to use it to destroy life.
Because the Hyde Amendment was never made into law, it must be re-upped every year with various spending bills. Without it, abortions across the country could significantly increase, and you would be footing the bill. In Virginia, 2 bronze statues of Confederate Generals Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson were trucked away on Saturday and put into storage. The statues were seen by some as a symbol of racial division. Now, after a long legal battle, the statues have been removed. Evan McMorris Santoro reports from Charlottesville.
3 hours on a Saturday morning, Charlottesville has wanted for years a monument to Confederate General Stonewall Jackson. On its way to storage. The notorious statue of General Robert E. Lee, which overlooked the park that held the deadly Unite the Right rally, also hoisted away.
It's only a moment for people who aren't affected.
For Zahania Bryant, who kicked off the effort to remove these statues with a petition drive back in 2016, when she was in 9th grade, it was the end of an effort that brought the world to her doorstep.
I wasn't going to believe it until I saw it. So when it was finally lifted off of its pedestal today, that's when I was able to have my moment and fully process that it was happening.
Bryant convinced Charlottesville. The world outside the city took longer. In early 2017, the city council voted to remove the monuments, but groups who defend the Confederate legacy took Charlottesville to court. They succeeded in getting the removal delayed.
We are a people. We will not be replaced!
In October 2017, a judge ruled again that they couldn't remove the statues. And in 2018, a judge ordered that those coverings be removed. But Charlottesville never changed its mind. The city kept fighting in court. This April, the Virginia Supreme Court ruled in its favor. Then came Saturday.
What happened? We have the ability to remove the statues today. It has stood for 104 years, and it doesn't need to stay a moment longer.
The end of a long and bloody battle for one city, grappling with how to tell our nation's story. Evan McMorris Santoro, Charlottesville, Virginia.
It's been almost 4 years since the Unite the Right rally in support of keeping the statues turned violent and deadly, prompting the U.S. Bishops' Conference to pen a pastoral letter against racism, writing, "What is needed and what we are calling for is a genuine conversion of the heart, a conversion that will compel change and the reform of our institutions and society." You can read the whole letter on the Bishop's website, usccb.org. It's a very special friendship. 2 people teaming up to provide free teddy bears and other toys to migrant children in holding facilities at the border. One, a filmmaker whose documentary Francesco about Pope Francis may ring a bell. The other, David Sosha, chief executive of Beverly Hills Teddy Bear Company. He joins us now. David, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
David, what a great idea. Where did it come from, and how many of these toys have you donated so far?
So the idea really, we always help children in need, but this one really hit our heartstrings, right? These kids were so they come over with nothing because we got to meet them. And but the movie Francesco elevated what we want to do to another level.
Now, what's it like to be in these facilities and to see the reaction from these children when they receive the toys?
So we had a small team that we went with. And the kids were crying, and when I say they have nothing, they have the clothes on their back and they have their mom or dad, hopefully. So we went in there, the mood was definitely somber, but it's just amazing what a stuffed animal can do, or just any little thing that they can hold and hug. And so I mean, it was just a tremendous experience.
I'm sure it's such a comfort to them to have something that, as you were saying, that they can hold and hug. Now, is this something that you plan to continue to do? And if so, do you see this happening long term?
We are. So our dream is to do this worldwide. Right now, we're focusing in the U.S. because that's where we live, and we see the greatest need here for these children. So we've gone to 3 states now.
David, I know you're Catholic, so what role has your faith played in this project?
My pastor has been a huge influence on me, and his battle cry is always to help the poorest of the poor. Period, the end. That is what he's about, and he has been my spiritual director for over 20 years, and he's just an incredible pastor and leader and shepherd.
Is there a way for people watching at home to get involved or to donate?
There is. What I would say is that if you could reach out to our company, even to myself personally, our website's pretty simple. It's just plush.com. We can help facilitate and find the right place to go, because it is hard. I mean, with this being a political issue, even though we're non-political in this, it's very hard, and we've been fortunate to work directly with the leaders in Catholic Charities or the Archdiocese in the respective places.
And now, David, for the people at home who have obviously never been to one of these facilities, can you tell me a moment where you just realized that you were making an impact?
Sure. So the Pope says, help the little ones, help those who are in need. And these kids, when it almost selfishly, when I was there and we got to hand them a stuffed animal, immediately their eyes beamed, the cries stopped. They were throwing them around, because some are shaped in balls. They were just having a great time, and they truly are Jesus' favorite, right? I mean, Jesus said, let the children come to me. And it truly there was that moment that you're like, wow, this really is, this is it.
Oh, it sounds like such an incredible moment to be a part of. I wish I had been able to be there. Definitely on the next one, right?
You come to the next one. Sure.
David Sosha, Beverly Hills Teddy Bear Company Chief Executive, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much. God bless.
As David said, if you would like to donate to the cause, go to plush.com and contact David Sosha through the Contact Us page. Still to come on Currents News, fireworks and singing fans fill the night as Italy celebrates a big win. Plus, this iconic piece of movie memorabilia isn't in Kansas anymore. The unique story behind Judy Garland's long-lost dress. The crowds went wild as Italy clinched its first major title in 15 years. It was a tight comeback after being behind in the game, but Italy beat out England with a penalty shootout in the Euro 2020 final, winning 3-2. This was Italy's second continental title since 1968. The country has 4 World Cups. Fans in Rome erupting in celebrations as the final whistle blows. Fireworks and singing fans filled the night in Rome as thousands of people took to the streets after the big game. Many Italians saw the European Championship as a relaunch for a country that spent much of the past 16 months in various stages of lockdown. Their celebrations found their way to the Diocese of Brooklyn, too. Hundreds of Italian fans flooded the streets of Bensonhurst, cheering and waving Italian flags as they celebrated the big win over England. And finally, a dress believed to be worn by Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz is certainly not in Kansas anymore. Dorothy's iconic blue gingham dress was gifted to the Catholic University of America back in 1972, and after nearly 50 years of being missing, it finally turned up in a white trash bag stashed high in the theater department's office. The university says it will properly preserve the dress. And that is Currents News. I'm Emily Druby. Thank you for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.